Recently, there's been an incredible breakthrough in emulation, probably the biggest emulation event since Nintendo Switch, and we are currently still in the middle of this massive progress occurring in real time with more growth to come. Even the Steam Deck is getting to enjoy this a bit. I am, of course, talking about the most recent PS4 emulator to come on the scene, Shad PS4, and how quickly it seems to be improving, specifically with Bloodborne. Everybody has been waiting so long for Sony to port Bloodborne to the PC, and it looks like the community said, screw it, we'll do it ourselves. So just a month ago, it was big news that Shad PS4 was able to boot into Bloodborne at all, because while there has been quite a bit of progress in PS4 emulation, most of it was either behind the scenes or related to low spec games that people were really just not that interested in emulating. In fact, Shad PS4 itself is relatively new, not even hitting its 2-year birthday yet. But just a little over a month ago, in early July, George Morales, the maintainer of Shad PS4, published a video with the milestone moment: Bloodborne booting into the title screen using version 0.1.1. Now, as you can see, at this point, the colors are still funky, but this alone is a big milestone. Then a week later, he posted a new video with corrected colors. Now, just getting as far as the title screen and character creation was incredibly remarkable, but in the last 2 weeks, even more progress has been made. On August 14th and 16th, he showed cutscenes working, including accurate video streaming and sound. And then just a few days later, it happened. On August 18th, George was in game with Bloodborne. I cannot overstate how momentous this is, even with the graphics being as glitchy as they are. This really is just a moment to behold, so really just soak it in. But then, just a few days later, on August 21st, George was able to showcase the Cleric Beast boss fight, and he's doing so with much fewer graphical glitches. That means we saw all of that insane progress in the span of less than 2 months. On July 5th, we were able to witness the title screen on PC, albeit incredibly glitchy, and by August 21st, we can reach the first boss. I haven't seen progress like this in a long time, and I do want to give a bit of an explanation as to why we're seeing such quick progress at this point, but man, this is absolutely incredible, an absolute breakthrough for emulation and PC gaming. I promised we would even get to see this progress on the Steam Deck, so here you go. Here's a video from Deck Wizard showing off Old Yarnum on the Steam Deck. Now mind you, in order to get this to work, the map had to be edited with most of the geometry removed, but again, this is an early state, and contrary to popular belief, I do believe there's hope to be had that this game will eventually run somewhat decently on the Steam Deck, specifically because Shad PS4 is not an ordinary emulator. Virtually any PS4 emulator that is currently in development for PCs is going to be more like a compatibility layer, just like Proton and Wine. Given that PS4 is an x86 machine just like your PC is, the most effective path to emulation is software that replaces calls to various PS4 SDKs with calls to PC SDKs. So calls in the rendering pipeline, for example, those are going to be replaced with calls to Vulkan. Granted, all of this is relatively oversimplified, and there are things like shaders which actually do need to be decompiled and recompiled altogether, but the end result is that with enough work, you'll likely not be incurring major overhead when it comes to performance like you would on a traditional emulator. All that to say, I think that Bloodborne on Steam Deck may be possible, but more importantly, it's really just fun to see this level of progress happening in real time, and I, for one, am tuned in to see what happens next. By the way, guys, my name is Rich, and this is your weekly roundup of gaming news for the Steam Deck and PC gaming at large. I have a great show prepared for you today. We're going to talk about a new feature that Valve just introduced to the Steam Deck. I think it makes ProtonDB a little less necessary. Valve also finally announced their new game, and in doing so, they inadvertently made another game launch look even worse than it already did. There's also a bunch of exciting game announcements for the PC and some reflection on the PC Store Wars. If you're enjoying the show so far, be sure to leave a like and a sub on my way to 100K. Today's video is sponsored by JSAUX and their new powerful and compact 6-in-1 docking station. It has a modular design with 2 parts that make it easy to pack and easy to store. The first part is a base for your PC handheld, and this is a small but versatile base that can fit a variety of PC handhelds like the Steam Deck OLED, ROG Ally, and the Lenovo Legion Go. Then there's a dock that is fitted with a Thunderbolt-capable USB-C port, dual USB-A 3.0, gigabit Ethernet, and a USB-C port that's capable capable of up to 100 watts of input. Then you can use this small cable at the top to attach to your handheld, laptop, or even your phone. There's also a neat little pocket to store your USB-C cable when it's not in use. The minimal and modular design makes it so that it's easy to pack for trips or store away when it's not in use. More importantly, JSAUX has been dedicated to the Steam Deck scene since the beginning with innovative designs and firmware upgrades that always help you keep your dock up to date. If you want to learn more, follow my links in the description. Thank you to JSAUX for sponsoring this video. Valve just announced a new feature for Steam Deck users, and it's not only helpful, I think it once again kind of borrows from the community. They added the ability to see when a review was written by someone who played primarily on the Steam Deck. If you see a Steam Deck icon next to the review, you can rest assured that that review comes from someone that primarily plays that game on the Steam Deck. This applies retroactively, so if I look at this review of Kena Bridge of Spirits from my friends over at Steam Deck HQ, I can see that they put in at least 1.5 Steam Deck hours out of the total 2.3 hours that they played this game when they reviewed it. Additionally, Valve also lets you filter all reviews to only people that mostly played a game on Steam Deck. This is where I think ProtonDB becomes a little less necessary, at least for me. The main reason I go to ProtonDB is to see reviews from people that have played on the Steam Deck to get an idea of how those games will perform on the deck. In fact, if someone was going to install Decky Loader for the Steam Deck, my #1 recommendation would have been the ProtonDB Badges plugin. Now, with this feature, it's honestly not something I feel like I need to rush to recommend. Have you left a review where you've seen the Steam Deck icon yet? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to leave the name of the game so I can look it up and maybe I can share screenshots of that in the next video. Valve continued their incredibly busy week by officially announcing their new game in early development, Deadlock, and they did so with the absolute funniest timing ever. You'll see what I mean. This also brought some fresh information about the alleged Half-Life 3, but more on that later as well. Deadlock is the game that has been an open secret for a few weeks now. It's a MOBA-infused hero shooter that is only available via invite, with more and more invites going out each day. Hundreds of thousands of people now have access to Deadlock, with the game easily getting to 50,000 concurrent players over the weekend. This was first announced on the invite-only Deadlock Discord, where players were told that they can now openly discuss the game as well as stream and publish gameplay videos. Then, the official Steam store page went up for Deadlock. The store page notes that this is a game that is in very early development and even includes temporary art. Furthermore, the in-game warning has been updated and is no longer asking players to avoid discussing the game. All told, it looks like the first rule of Deadlock no longer applies, and we're all free to post what we want about the game. Which makes sense, seeing as once again there are hundreds of thousands, soon to be millions probably, of players with access to Valve's latest game. As I mentioned, however, the timing of this announcement was unfortunate for the developers of Concord, who launched their own hero shooter the very same day. Can you imagine you come into work and find out you have to compete with Gabe Newell and his gang of aperture geniuses? Just give me the head crab now. But yeah, turns out Concord has been in some form of development for 8 years, ever since Overwatch launched. Kinda seems like chasing trends just doesn't make any sense when games take nearly a decade to develop. At that point, it shouldn't even be called chasing trends. The trend has already lapped you twice, and you're just getting off the blocks. But I'm not trying to pile on, because this game has already had enough to deal with, including a shockingly low player base and a small contingent of people that are hating it for, let's just say, nonsensical reasons. With regard to the player count, Concord struggled to even reach 700-ish concurrent players on launch day, and by day 2, it couldn't even crack 500. Again, my intent isn't to pile on, but I do think there are a ton of lessons to be learned from this, and I also believe it speaks to what players actually want from video games. On that note, let's talk about Black Myth Wukong. Black Myth Wukong released last week as one of the most popular games to ever launch on Steam. The all-time concurrent player count is the second highest of any game ever, and is easily the highest of any single-player game. Wukong is an action game with some Souls-like elements. In fact, I'm a little surprised no one's called it a Souls-Light yet, because while it does share some similarities with games like Demon's Souls and Elden Ring, it also has some notable differences. Primarily, you don't lose leveling currency when you die, and secondarily, non-boss encounters are largely trivial. This gives the boss rush feeling that so many have been referencing at this point. To that end, I've seen a lot of people say that it's a lot easier than a Souls game, especially the notoriously unforgiving Sekiro, which Wukong most often gets compared to. Perhaps this is the more approachable Souls game that so many have been clamoring for, and perhaps that explains some of its popularity. Interestingly, Wukong has also been the top played game on Steam Deck ever since it released, despite some notable performance quirks. To be fair, this title doesn't seem particularly well optimized on any platform, and we're likely to see some performance patches in the future. Nonetheless, with being able to reach a mostly consistent 30 frames per second, many players seem satisfied with performance on the deck. Of course, I'd be remiss to mention one of the main reasons this game has sold so many copies. Its popularity in China, the home country of game development studio Game Science, has been absolutely tremendous. Valve has long been advocating for the immense Steam player base in China, with advice to game developers to localize their games and store pages in the local languages for greater store visibility. So when a game like Black Myth Wukong is developed in China, steeped in Chinese mythology, and of course is localized appropriately, you can bet it's going to sell incredibly well in that region, and indeed that's just what Wukong has done, with over 80% of its player base residing in China, as you can see thanks to this research from Simon Carless of Game Discover Co. Even aside from its success in the East, it does seem like there's a lot to learn from the stark contrast between the soaring success of Wukong and a crash landing of Concord. Despite comparisons to Souls games, Black Myth Wukong doesn't seem like it's chasing a trend, and instead feels like it's carved its own lane by focusing on boss encounters in Chinese mythology. Moreover, despite the huge potential upside of live service games, the risk is even greater, and that well seems to be drying quickly. The pendulum is swinging the other way, and people want single player experiences that they can digest without fear of missing out. While live service games are often seen at the top of the play charts on Steam, it would be silly to ignore all the single player games that have increasingly made it to those charts as well. On the subject of single-player games coming to PC, the port of Final Fantasy XVI has officially been announced with a release date of September 17th. And unlike previous Final Fantasy ports to PC, this is not going to be a timed exclusive for the Epic Game Store. That's right, this is coming to Steam day and date with EGS. More importantly, Square has now said that their next Final Fantasy game will likely launch to PC on day one and not be relegated to a delay after the console release, as we have so often seen. One piece of bad news with this port, however, is that it is plagued with de novo DRM. Perhaps this has contributed to some of the performance problems that we have witnessed already as well. That's right, the store page for this game launched with a playable demo. By the way, I'm continuing to love this trend of game developers releasing demos, and I'm happy to see a series as popular as Final Fantasy receive a demo for its latest entry on Steam. That said, that demo is beyond rough on Steam Deck, and some people have noted that it's not particularly well optimized in general. While I would say that I hope Square can fix these issues by launch, I'll also say I'm not very optimistic about that. Another game that will be coming to Steam on day one is Borderlands 4. Randy Pitchford somehow pulled a rabbit out of a hat and managed to get players excited about Borderlands again immediately after the Borderlands movie had such a devastating opening in theaters. The big news for us, though, is that just like FF16, Borderlands 4 won't be a timed exclusive on the Epic Game Store. It's once again a day-and-date release for Steam as well. This news has caused some people to revisit Randy's comments. Yeah, it was just 5 years ago that Randy Pitchford had this to say about Epic and Valve. He said he expects that Epic's investment in technology will outpace Valve's, and that when we look back at Steam in 5 or 10 years, Steam may look like a dying store. Well, Randy, I won't be looking to you for lottery numbers anytime soon, because nothing about what you said has come true. Valve's investment in technology since 2019 has made Linux a viable platform for gaming and has started a revolution in handheld gaming, not to mention the continued work on VR, as well as new games like Deadlock and this supposed Half-Life 3 project. Meanwhile, Epic seems to have focused their store-related investments in fighting Apple and buying exclusives. As a result, Steam has just reached a new high of 37 million concurrent users, while Epic has, well, you know. But I do have to hand it to Randy. When he was asked about this, Randy said that his long-term hope regarding Epic's store were misplaced or overly optimistic. He also made mention of the Steam Deck, saying that as a Steam Deck customer and user, my bias for personal interest and convenience is fighting against my wish for a more developer-friendly alternative on Windows PC. Randy also pointed out that Epic hasn't successfully pressed its advantage, and in this regard, I do tend to agree. Going back to the concept of live service games versus single player experiences, I do wonder what would have happened if Epic had positioned themselves as the go-to hub for live service games. While it is much easier said than done, Epic could have potentially carved its own lane if they were to have focused their exclusivity efforts on games like Destiny 2, Apex Legends, PUBG, and Valorant. Relatedly, Tim Sweeney, CEO of Epic Games, acknowledged that a lot of the exclusivity deals have not been good investments for Epic Games, but that the free games that Epic gives out weekly have been magical and very economical. He added that although it may seem counterintuitive, developers who give away free games actually see an upsurge in the sale of their paid games on the store, simply because their free game raises awareness. Perhaps this will be the lane that Epic continues to carve for itself. Aside from FF16 and Borderlands, we finally got a release date for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. This is coming to Xbox and PC on December 8th. Somewhat surprisingly, Microsoft also announced it's going to be coming to PlayStation a little while later. Still, it was always the PC date that interested me, so I'm glad that we finally have that. Likewise, we also got the release date and system requirements for Dragon Age Veilguard as part of a new release date trailer. The release date is October 31st. And while the system requirements are somewhat modest, EA and BioWare did not end up sharing what sort of resolution and frame rate you could expect from the gear in question. For minimum specs, Veilguard is asking for a GTX 970, i5 8400, and 16 gigabytes of RAM. That amount of RAM will likely end up being a problem for the Steam Deck, which has 16 gigabytes of RAM to share between system memory and video memory. You might recall that EA and BioWare recently promised that this game will be Steam Deck verified, and in fact, they've already gotten the green check from Valve. While I do remain skeptical, I'm very open to being wrong, and I'll be the first person in line to praise this game if it performs well on deck. The Steam Deck should be home to all the epic role-playing games, and I hope Dragon Age Veilguard gets to join that party. One more game announcement that I'm cautiously excited about is Mafia: The Old Country. Mafia 2 is the only game I've played in the series so far, but as someone whose favorite movies include A Bronx Tale, Goodfellas, and Casino, I was really pleased with Mafia 2, and I'm excited by the prospect of taking this mob game to the brutal underworld of 1900s Sicily. In news that should be surprising to no one, we also got confirmation that Stellar Blade will be coming to PC. As reported by Tech for Gamers, the development studio ShiftUp has published an investor report that is asking investors to look forward to the PC port of Stellar Blade, which ShiftUp believes will have even better results than it did on PS5. They also said that a successful launch could encourage the studio to release Stellar Blade's sequel on PC from the very beginning. Although I do have a PS5 and I'm a big fan of these sort of combat games, this is one title that I've yet to pick up, primarily because I was just waiting for a PC release. So I, for one, am looking forward to this one. Data miners have been putting in serious work into investigating what lies beneath Deadlock and updates to other Valve games. Deadlock specifically has been a bit of a goldmine, as it appears to be the game that Valve is using to improve their Source 2 engine in ways that should benefit the eventual Half-Life 3, a game that they felt was too ambitious for the engine at the time that they began working on it. At least, that's how it was put by data miner and YouTuber Gabe Follower. In his latest video, Gabe Follower documents a few notable points about the information he's gathered so far. He says that the game will feature a semi-open world, a weather system, a day and night cycle, and smart NPCs that can talk to you. Additionally, the game is also known internally as Half-Life Zen and is most likely a direct sequel to Half-Life Alyx that will take the player back to Zen, where they may encounter creatures like the Zen Gorilla. Notably, this video comes after another Half-Life 3 video from another data miner, Tyler McVicker. This is important because between these two videos, Valve has renamed some things seemingly in an effort to cover their tracks and make subsequent data mining just a little more challenging. Thankfully, Tyler McVicker has said that he has another big video on the way, so we have even more Half-Life 3 copium to look forward to. Next up, I do have some more Steam Deck and PC handheld specific news. First, I want to share this tweet and write-up from uploadvr.com, where they plug a Steam Deck into the new MetaQuest HDMI link in order to make a modular gaming PC. As they put it, the Steam Deck is wired to Quest 3 and the Deck's display is turned off for private viewing inside VR. Quest 3 instead shows a large compressed 1080p virtual display wherever they want to put it. They type on the desktop keyboard connected via Bluetooth to the Steam Deck, and of course, given the high resolution and frame rate demands of a VR headset, you are pretty limited in what you can actually play in this virtual desktop. They showcase Doom 1 and 2 and also reference Stardew Valley just to give you an idea of what's possible. Pretty neat. Interestingly, Mechanism has just announced the Steam Deck gaming pillow. Although it looks a tad silly at first glance, this accessory actually seems like it would be pretty helpful if you like to play Steam Deck while laying down. Mechanism is the company behind Deckmate, so they have great experience when it comes to building helpful Steam Deck accessories. There's an elevated mount that you can use with a variety of grips, so you can mount your Steam Deck, ROG Ally, or even a tablet or Kindle. There's also a mount on the pillow itself where you can place a battery pack or maybe your phone for dual screen gaming. It's already sold out, but the good news is that they have more on the way, so definitely keep your eye out for this one. In the last segment of today's news roundup, I wanted to cover a few homebrew projects for this week. I'm going to focus on a few fan games since I did have the big emulation story up front. The first one is called Super Mario and the Rainbow Stars. There's a prologue and a first chapter that's available to play now. This demo is about 2 to 4 hours long. It's a game that's inspired by the Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi series, but inside this 2D platformer format. It's incredible quality, and honestly, this is one of the best Mario games in years, and I'm not just talking about fan games. The next one is Mario and the Multiverse. This is a Mario 64 ROM hack where there are different elements from different game universes like Splatoon, Crash Bandicoot, and Pokemon. Recently, the dev has been uploading various clips to Twitter, and he recently showed a clip where Mario was shooting the Doom shotgun in the first half and violently phasing through foes like Katana Zero in the second half. It's all pretty cool. There's no release date for this yet, but I'll definitely keep you posted on this one. And this here is a new Mega Man for the Sega Genesis. It's called Mega Man The Sequel Wars, and notably, this is not a ROM hack. It's fully coded from scratch in C, so this is just a good old homebrew fan game for the Mega Drive. Essentially, this is a full remake of Mega Man 4, but for the Sega Genesis. The upgrade to the 16-bit era means that we get some better looking parallax, some multi-sprite bosses, and better graphics overall. It has smooth controls, an original soundtrack that includes both remakes and new compositions, and there are new characters to play, as well as more gameplay options, including the ability to use any weapon from Mega Man 4, 5, or 6. Definitely a must-play for fans of the series. Finally, I have Super Mario Bros. Maker. This is a port of Super Mario Bros. From the NES to the SNES, but it adds a whole Maker mode. You can play the entirety of Super Mario 1, and at any point, you can just pull up the Maker mode to alter the level that you're in. In addition to the obvious Super Mario Maker series inspiration, this also reminds me of the recent Super Mario Maker 64, which is also pretty cool. I'm definitely enjoying this trend, and I hope to see more of it. All right, that's going to do it for this week's roundup. I hope you're all having a wonderful week. Deck Gang out. Goodbye.